We are live, and it's time to go on the record.
I will not sugarcoat this. This is a disappointing day for us.
Doing
big things is hard.
Congress pushes back as Speaker Ryan and Trump taste failure on their first big test. How will they fare with tax reform?
This is really the worst way to conduct government. It's the worst way to get bills passed.
Congressman Stephen Lynch is our guest this morning. He lived the week in Washington that one won't soon forget. And what this all means for Massachusetts.
That there's no such thing as a Republican judge or a Democratic judge. We just have judges.
And speaking of judges, can a Democrat like Elizabeth Warren stop Neil Gorsuch from ascending to the high court? He's back on the Hill tomorrow. We go on the record right now.
From WCPP Boston, the inside word from Washington to Beacon Hill. Today's newsmakers are going on the record.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Ed Harding, along with News Center 5's political reporter Janet Wu. Thank you for joining us this morning for a live edition of OTR. And what a political earthquake it has been this week. Sometimes 2, 3, 4 tremors on a daily basis. Congressman Stephen Lynch is here. Just let me ask you right off the top. What was the tenor, the tone, the feel in Washington for the 5 days?
It was chaotic because first of all, the bill on health care was not in print, and you had negotiations going on between Republicans to change provisions of the committee draft that had come out a week before. So, and obviously there was a lot of tension there, not only Democrat versus Republican, but Freedom Party caucus versus some of the few moderates that are over there. So it was chaotic.
Yeah. The President Trump and Speaker Ryan now say the fight is over. Do you believe them? Do you think the fight is over? Or do you think the House Freedom Caucus, as you mentioned, or the other factions are going to try to revisit this soon rather than later?
I doubt very much. There's a certain ripeness that builds around certain issues, and I think it's going to be a while before we revisit health care. There are some provisions that would phase in, and maybe when that happens in 2018 or 2020, there might be an opportunity to revisit some of those provisions.
There also has been some chatter that maybe the administration, the president, might reach out to Democrats to try to put something together that's more palatable to the folks on the left. Is this pure nonsense?
Pretty much, yeah. There was an attempt last week to try to get about 20 members of the moderate wing of the Democratic Party, including myself, to go over to the White House. But the president has really taken a scorched earth approach to government, and we felt that there was really no common ground that we could reach with this president. He has taken very, very extreme positions. His budget is just ridiculous. So we felt going over there might actually encourage him to continue to take these positions.
So you were against going over there to meet with him?
Right.
Well, so let's pick it up with the scorched earth part there. What is the long-term political damage for the president, in your eyes?
I'm not sure, really. It remains to be seen. Remember, President Obama got his bill passed,
right,
but then lost 76 seats in the House and then lost the Senate. So, and so it built opposition for him. It remains to be seen whether or not going to the next issue, whether it be, building the wall or tax reform, whether that helps President Trump.
That's what I was going to ask you. What does it mean for it? He says he's going to move on to tax reform in some fashion. Yeah. So that's his next hurdle.
Well, I think under normal conditions, I think tax reform might get some receptivity in the House. I think there are Democrats and Republicans. Richie Neal is running our operation on Ways and Means. He's our senior guy. He's our leader. There's some open areas that we could actually negotiate on. And I understand that the president wants to use some of that money for his infrastructure bill, and I know there are a lot of cities and towns in Massachusetts and across the country that would like to see some money for transportation and for infrastructure. So that's an area that I think might be fertile. It's not bridges are bipartison. They're not,
So you're thinking his political clout has been bruised, but it has not been broken at this point?
Yeah, it's too soon to tell, really, whether or not the breach that he's had within his own party will remain.
Let's change the conversation a little bit. This week, the NSA and the FBI confirmed that they are investigating ties between the Trump campaign and Russia. Let's take a listen.
They engaged in a multifaceted campaign of active measures to undermine our democracy and hurt one of the candidates and hope to help one of the other candidates.
It's a stunning confirmation, but do you think this will have any real impact on the president's credibility or on midterm elections, quite frankly?
Well, if there's a connection to him that is proven, yeah, definitely it'll hurt his credibility. It might even go further than that.
Just the fact that there's an investigation out there, do you think it hurts him, though?
Oh, sure, because these are people that were perceived to be very close to Manafort, and others were very close to the president. And, there's been these, ongoing contacts between, Jeff Sessions and the Russians and others. So, yeah, there's this cloud of suspicion that is around the Trump campaign and obviously attaches to the president.
It's amazing how quickly things have worked in Washington. The Comey revelations, which are recent, feel like they've been so long ago, given what happened in the wake of that. But I want to play another one. This is another revelation from Comey about the wiretapping that the president has been insisting came from then President Obama's orders. Listen to what he had to say.
With respect to the president's tweets about alleged wiretapping directed at him by the prior administration, I have no information that supports those tweets.
All right, no information that supports the tweets. And then there was the awkward moment with German Chancellor Angela Merkel about handshake, and no acknowledgement apparently of that question. How would you assess the relationship with foreign countries right now?
Well, look, there are a number of foreign leaders that we deal with. I'm on a national security subcommittee, and when we're dealing with North Korea, Kim Jong-un is not stable. He's not a balanced leader, and it affects my view of North Korea. I think back in the day, you could say the same thing about Chavez in Venezuela or Ahmadinejad in Iran. I don't want other countries looking at us in that way because our president has shown some instability or some willingness to just blurt stuff out. I mean, that's not healthy for us.
But do you think it's hurt us so far?
I do, yeah.
And who do you think it's hurt us the most with?
I think the Middle East, so I was doing a round of refugee camps in the Middle East right on the Syrian border. So the Jordanians, the Turks, I was in Beirut, Lebanon. And not the first question they asked, but the second or third question that the ministers was particularly asked, what's up with the Muslim ban? What is that all about?
And what's your answer to that?
Even yesterday with Salim al-Jabouri, the Sunni speaker of the Iraqi parliament, very, very upset about that initial ban of people coming from Iraq when U.S. and Iraqi troops are going into Mosul together. He said, this is the worst timing we could possibly have. So, that has hurt us. That has hurt our ability.
What do you tell them when they ask you that question?
Well, I tell them that's not. Well, let me just add this. Salim al-Jabouri, the Sunni speaker of the Iraqi parliament, said, we were very encouraged to see the Women's March and the protests in response to this policy. And it was all over the Arab news. Al Jazeera, all of the networks carried it in the Middle East. And they said, that shows us that the American people, that is not the position of the American people, that is the position of your president and maybe of this party.
But quite frankly, he still has a month to go before his first 100 days is over. He has time to turn this around, do you think? His image?
Well, there are presidents who have the humility. George W. Bush came in and he was a very different president early on. He matured. I think he was humbled by the responsibility. I'm not so sure that's in the makeup of this particular president. He's not a young man. He has his ways. He has a very, very different, bizarre in some cases, leadership style. So I'm not so sure he's going to round out and right his ship. I think he's going to keep doing what he has always done, and it's not been helpful thus far.
I'm going to change the mood dramatically because we're going to go to the OTR pop quiz. But as kind of
I hate this quiz.
No, wait, hold on.
Speaking of humble.
This is a setup to the OTR pop quiz. Now, normally we launch right into the pop quiz.
Yeah.
But first we have to share this. Take a look.
Be our guest, be our guest. Immigration is a mess. Grab your suitcase and some toothpaste. City Hall will do the rest. From Donny
I have to tell you, I was pretty impressed with that. Pretty darn impressed.
That was, of course, the performance last week at St. Patrick's Day breakfast in Southeast. So you have inspired us. So the theme for this week's OTR pop quiz is politics and music. Question 1, Mr. Crooner, is never one to shy from symbolism and self-congratulations. What Frank Sinatra hit did President Trump and Melania Trump dance to at the inaugural ball?
My Way?
Absolutely. Bingo.
Yeah.
If you want to sing it. You can join in, Congressman,
Well,
if you would
thank
like
you.
to.
I think I'll pass on that.
You pass on that one? All right, okay. Question 2. President Nixon played the piano. President Clinton occasionally played the sax in public. What was President Obama's musical mark?
Wow. The kazoo?
Well,
I don't know.
he loved music, especially Al Green. Listen to this.
So in love with you.
All right, Congressman, you want to sing that one?
No, I'll
All right,
pass.
then we'll take a break.
Great voice.
Isn't there a competition voice-off or something like that?
He wins it.
You against Barack Obama.
We'll be right back
It
with
would be
Congressman
interesting.
Lynch.